What do you think of Trump?
I think I'm going to vote for him.
Really?
Yeah, in the next election. Yes, I am.
Are you ready for the blowback?
Well, yeah.
If inevitably comes
well,
with Trump?
you know, I think in this election, everybody's got to, I think they're going to take a side or whatever, but it just seems to me, it just makes sense. I was ready not to vote for Trump until what I saw is more than politics. I see a weaponization of our justice system.
Yeah.
And a challenge to our Constitution, us as Americans, that I don't think we're going to have. And, you know, Trump is the most investigated person probably in the history of the world. And they haven't been able to really get him. People might call him an asshole, but he's my asshole.
Did a Hollywood celebrity just endorse Trump? Because it sure sounded like Dennis Quaid is now backing the former president. And he's not the only one joining the Unity Party. Former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has now just endorsed Donald J. Trump to become the 47th president of the United States. And that's extremely huge news, as Tulsi Gabbard was hailed as the woman who pushed Harris out of the last presidential race. Both Donald Trump and Tulsi Gabbard were there at the Arlington National Cemetery to honor the 13 U.S. service members that were killed in the Abbeygate bombing. Now, you might be wondering how awkward that might have been, since it's a sure thing that President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris was there as well. Well, the problem is they were not there. In fact, members of the Gold Star families have confirmed that neither Kamala Harris nor Joe Biden have even reached out to them after the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal 3 years ago. Tulsi Gabbard confirmed that President Joe Biden is currently on vacation. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is campaigning on the idea of joy. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump actually attended this extremely important event. And it's part of the reason as to why Gabbard is now supporting the former president. And guys, before we get into this, please take a second, hit the like button for the video. Totally appreciate you guys. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and for sharing this video on Facebook and Twitter.
We know how important it is to have a commander-in-chief who values every single one of our lives and who has the strength and the courage to exercise all means of diplomacy, meeting with dictators, allies, adversaries, partners in the pursuit of peace, recognizing that war is always and should always be a last resort. I endorse President Trump today because he has those qualities and he's proven that he is that commander-in-chief. Kamala Harris has proven she is not. We're closer to the brink of nuclear war now than ever before, closer to World War III because of Harris and Biden and their policies.
And just to remind you guys, here's what Kamala Harris had to say about what's happening in Afghanistan, even touting that she was the last person in the room with President Biden when he made that horrific decision.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision. Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
And this is just one of the weaknesses of Harris. Kamala Harris is not really up for interviews that ask tough questions. Heck, she doesn't even know what to do when she's asked non-confrontational questions. So here's Kamala Harris just a few months ago being asked about Donald Trump possibly getting another term as president.
On a different front, Axios this week reported that President Trump, if he gets a second term, will sort of dial back, for lack of a better term, DEI programs that the Biden administration has put in forth. Obviously, I know you disagree with that. I obviously believe that you don't want him to get a second term. That said, if that does happen, what do you think that would do to race relations in this country?
Well, let me say we're going to win, so it's not going to happen. But I think that, listen, today is actually, I believe, an anniversary in terms of Dr. King, right? And I was just in Selma, and we celebrated, acknowledged the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. I think it's really important that we as Americans always embrace our history, the parts that we're proud of and the parts that we're not proud of, but that we can't forget. And we should all agree that we should teach history, we should learn history if we're to ever have an accurate idea of where we want to go and where we don't want to go in the future. And that means also acknowledging the importance of diversity. It means acknowledging the importance of the fact that everyone should have equal opportunity to compete and equity. And then, of course, inclusion, that, hey, let's look around the room and see who's not here? And did we leave the door open?
This is the kind of exchange that exposes Kamala Harris. And it's why most, if not all, of her recent encounters with the press have been scripted. Either that or she doesn't take in any questions at all. And just to get that point across, here's another great Harris encounter with questions. You just can't even make this stuff up, guys. This is how she answers reporters. It's now leading to news outlets, even like CNN, to question why she's not doing any interviews. But of course, they're painting it in a soft way so as not to tell the American people that Kamala Harris isn't ready to do interviews.
I think it was kind of an unforced error. I don't know why they've made this into such a big deal. Had she been giving interviews throughout the course of the last couple of months or the last 6 weeks, I think this would not be that big of a deal. Look, if I were in her shoes, I would do an interview with local press. She's traveling to Georgia. She's traveling all over Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and other places. And I think the best thing for her to do would be to speak to local media in those states, because we know that media is very much trusted when it's local media, the people that are neighbors with the very people whose votes she wants.
And this is exactly why she got hammered during the 2019 Democratic presidential debate against Tulsi Gabbard. It's also being seen as the reason as to why she's pushing for changes to the debate format against Donald Trump. Now, remember that she was calling him a coward for not initially saying yes to a debate on ABC News. Y'all remember that, right? But now that Donald Trump is set to appear, she wants to change things up.
We do have to go, but I can't let you go without asking about the debate. It's making a lot of headlines. Is Trump planning on attending the ABC News debate September 10th? I know that there was some talk about being upset with the rules of it and maybe how ABC News conducted a recent interview with Senator Tom Cotton. Can you give us any insight? Will we see Trump debate Kamala Harris on ABC News?
Let's set the record straight on this. President Trump and our campaign committed to the ABC debate with the rules that were originally proposed, the same exact rules as the CNN debate where he competed and dominated Joe Biden. Kamala Harris's camp agreed to those rules as well. Now, all of a sudden, the Kamala Harris campaign is backpedaling. They are demanding new rules. They want it to be a seated debate. They want her to have notes on the debate stage. They want her to have an opening statement. It's probably because they've started their debate prep and her campaign team is realizing that she is not equipped to debate President Trump. If she can't debate President Trump with a simple set of rules, then she is certainly not fit to be commander-in-chief. It was her campaign spokesperson, Michael Tyler, who said the debate about debates is over. Well, now they're back to debating about debates. We are done. We have committed to the rules set by ABC, and Kamala Harris needs to be on that stage. We will see if she shows up.
Now, I just want to tell you guys how hilarious it would be to have a presidential debate where candidates are provided notes. I mean, just think about it in this context. How would you be able to make notes if you're not aware of the questions? Now, I'm not saying that she's been given the questions ahead of time, but it's certainly weird to think that anybody who's running for president of the most powerful country in the world would need notes for a simple debate. You would think that they would be sharp enough to remember basic facts and data before stepping on that stage.
Over 100 students in a district outside of Boston will have to find a new way to get to school in September. They won't have bus service due to a shortage. This comes as the state started paying for buses for migrant students whose families recently moved into their community. So joining us now is Ashley Francois, a mom of 3 from that school district.
Wait a second. So you mean to tell me that my kids, your kids, can't go to school on a school bus that your tax dollars are paying for because the city is now choosing to spend those funds on illegal migrants? Like, what is going on here? Do we need Donald Trump in here like now? Like, forget the 2024 election. Get him in here now. What is going on here, folks? How are migrant children being prioritized ahead of American kids? This doesn't make any sense at all, guys.
Ashley, this is quite the story, and it's one that impacts you personally, I understand. You have, Is it 3 children, and all of whom now about to figure out a way to get to school?
1 out of my 3 children have a bus for the school year because she's in elementary. The other 2 are middle school and high school, and that's where they stopped buses for these kids.
I see one of them right there. I see one of the kids right there. That's make your way in. It's fine. And I understand.
But what is going on here, guys? How How are we allowing this here in America? And see, this is what Kamala Harris wants to do. This is what Joe Biden wants to do. They know they're going to get the black vote. And it's funny because you hear all these complaints about Donald Trump leveraging Michaela Montgomery during Donald Trump's rally in Atlanta. Now, for those of you guys who don't happen to know who Michaela Montgomery is, Michaela is the black woman, very well spoken, who basically grabbed the mic from Donald Trump during his rally in Atlanta. This was before the Donald Trump assassination attempt over in Butler, Pennsylvania. But anyway, she is the owner of the company and essentially a media company called Conserve the Culture. And she made waves during Donald Trump's rally. Well, what we're seeing here, guys, is we are seeing the United States of America being compromised yet again by the leadership in office. Okay? You want to know about Kamala Harris's policies? Look at them. Her policies are right in front of your face, and they're only going to get worse here. Okay? And it's interesting because the left, the Democrats, have accused Donald Trump of leveraging Michaela Montgomery's race to essentially garner black support, to essentially garner support from black voters. But what we're seeing from the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz side of the camp is essentially the same thing that they're accusing Donald Trump of doing. They're inviting celebrities of the hip hop culture. Look at Meg Thee Stallion twerking on stage for votes. Essentially twerking for votes, guys. We're seeing Quavo. We're seeing Lil Jon, as well as many other hip hop artists, rappers, R&B singers, the likes. They even hinted toward Beyonce being at the final DNC rally and speech. Turns out that was a big letdown for a lot of folks. But this is what we're seeing. You guys want to know about what Kamala Harris's policies are? You want to know why Kamala Harris doesn't take interviews? This is why. There's no need to do any interviews. She's already in the presidential, in the Oval Office right now. If you wanted to know, is Kamala Harris going to be lowering taxes? Is Kamala Harris going to improve the educational system? Well, we're already seeing what Kamala Harris is doing with the educational system and what she's likely to continue to do on a grander scale if she becomes president of the United States.
I want to point out a couple of obvious statements. These have been out there from the very beginning. One is right here. You want to talk about inciting violence, inciting an insurrection. You want to talk about the ideas of promoting violence. Well, right here you've got Kamala Harris, who is actually trying to raise funds for the very people who are setting fire to our cities in 2020. Why don't we go look at Minneapolis? Why don't we go look at Seattle, New York, Baltimore? Why don't we look at what CHOP was doing, what was being encouraged? Why don't we look at Maxwell Waters, who said we need to be more confrontational, or Nancy Pelosi, the former speaker, who said, I'm surprised there's not more people out in the streets rioting. Now let's look at what President Trump said, however. He said, these things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long, go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. Well,
and yet they continue to blame Donald Trump for inciting an insurrection. Tim Walz essentially allowed his city to burn down. Tim Walz will join Kamala Harris in their attempt to allow America to burn itself down.
the media did remember this day forever, and so did the left, who continued to try and vilify it as something that it is not. But let me be clear. President Trump did not incite violence. This was not an insurrection. If this is an insurrection, then what about all the pro-Hamas members who sit in our Capitol and disrupt legislation, which just happened last week? Was that an insurrection? It was an unarmed group who is disrupting federal legislative process. That's what everyone in the media and all the left continues to try and claim. But the bottom line is that it was never about policing, and it was all about politics. This is election interference. This is trying to remove someone that they know will be the president of the United States, someone who was the 45th, 46th, and will be the 47th president of the United States. This is about ensuring that they can try and remove him from the ballot by attacking his family, by attacking his businesses, by claiming that there was a false narrative set up for fraud regarding the actual valuation of his property Mar-a-Lago, which...
For those of you guys who aren't familiar with what the senator is discussing right now, he's literally referencing the case that was against him in New York City. Judge Arthur Engoron, Letitia James, and a team of other DOJ and George Soros funded, backed agents of terror were coming after Donald Trump, his businesses, after some alleged fraud allegations, which I personally believe are just completely false. But of course, because, you know, the paid judges, they're all Democrats. They leverage their position to attack Donald Trump, to attack his finances. They knew how much money Donald Trump had set aside for his campaign.
And I'm glad he out. Trump, the best.
Barack Obama, I ain't got no message to him. I don't mess with Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm a Trump supporter. Trump do more for black people and care more about black people. And Barack Obama ain't black. Just to let that be known.
What about Kamala Harris?
I don't with her either. All Trump all day.
Yeah. What's your message to Donald Trump today?
Keep going, keep going. Come get us, man. We waiting on you.
I love this guy right here. Let me get this guy. I love this guy right here.
Well, you know, a lot of people forgot about that. You know, Kanye West was a big, huge Trump supporter. And, you know, Trump, I'm not aware that Kanye West was paid for doing that. And it's funny, if you guys remember, Donald Trump, he had legitimate friendships with plenty of black people. So all these folks that are coming out talking about how Donald Trump is a racist, I don't see how Donald Trump is any more of a racist than freaking Joe Biden was. And I don't see Joe Biden hanging out with any black people, you know? I mean, if you guys go back, I mean, Donald Trump, he had friends in high places that just so happened to be black. Look at Donald Trump used to be friends with Mike Tyson. He was friends with Oprah before she turned her back on him. You know, clearly he's got some kind of relationship with Kanye West here. But I also think it's interesting how a lot of these kids are coming up and you know, apparently whoever they're hanging out with, because these kids, kids aren't following politics. So I guess their parents, they're kind of like, you know, maybe they're becoming Trump fans. I don't know. But you can't ignore what is happening here. I think the culture's changing personally. I think people are opening their eyes. I think people are waking up not to be woke, not democratically or hyper liberally woke or anything like that. But what I mean is that I think people are waking up. I think people are looking at what the Democrats are doing in office, and they're asking themselves, is life actually better while Democrats are in office? Because you want to know about Kamala's policies. Well, ignore the fact that Kamala is not willing to take any kind of interviews, just like what she's doing now. By the way, if you guys haven't already, please take a second, hit the like button for the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for subscribing and sharing these videos. You guys are always amazing and supportive. I also thought that was pretty funny how he said that Barack Obama wasn't black either. I think it's so funny. Nobody wants to be black till it comes to politics, because you want to get that minority vote. You want to get that underdog vote, that support, right? Now, speaking of which, I'm reminded that the ploy of the Harris campaign to make this all about identity politics just isn't working. And she's getting a lot of blowback from voters who she's trying to pander to. Now, of course, Kamala Harris will probably be very familiar with a lot of blowback in her time. One of which is a black woman from Atlanta who called out Vice President Kamala Harris in a recent interview. Now, I covered this in quite a bit of detail in a previous video that you guys absolutely need to watch next. As always, thanks so much for your support, guys. Thank you for hitting the like button, subscribing to the channel, and for sharing this video on Facebook and Twitter. I'll see you on the next one.